Okay, so Lady Montague says on page 17, line 100, between 115 and 120, so like you count, so it's like 119, 118. Lady Montague says, "Oh, where's Romeo? Saw you him today? Right glad I am he was not at this fray." And Benvolio, Romeo's cousin, best friend, says, make sure you're following along line 120. "Madam, an hour before the worshipped sun peered forth the golden window of the east, a troubled mind drove me to walk abroad, where, underneath the grove of sycamore that westward rooteth from this city's side, so early walking did I see your son. Towards him I made, but he was ware of me, and stole into the covert of the woods. I, measuring his affections by mine own, which then most sought where most might not be found, being one too many by my weary self, pursued my humor, not pursuing his, and gladly shunned he who gladly fled from me." So Benvolio says, you know what? I saw Romeo earlier today, but what time did he see him? You guys look at line 120 and 121. "An hour before the worshipped sun peered forth from the golden window of the east." What time is that, Alana? What time is one? Everyone look at line 120.
An hour before sunset?
Close. If it's in the east, sunrise, right? Sunrise in the east, sets in the west. So an hour before sunrise, I decided to take a walk. Make sure you're following along, girls in the back. And what did he see when he was taking a walk? Romeo. And how was Romeo acting? Was Romeo like, "Oh, hey, bro, what's up? Let's hang out"? No, he said he was dipping. Is that what he said? Because it worked. He's like, he dipped, right? He's like, "Yep, peace, I'm out. I'm not talking to you right now." Yeah, he said, he stole into the cover of the wood. I, measuring his affections by mine own, I judged how I felt when I, want to be alone, and I gladly shunned he who gladly fled from me. I was like, "Fine, bro, you don't want to talk? I'm good. We're good. Take your time." And Montague, his dad, Romeo's dad, he's listening to this as Benvolio is saying it. And he's like, "Many a morning hath he there been seen." So if he says, "Many a morning hath he there been seen," is this the first time that Romeo has been found to be walking around early in the morning? Many a morning hath he there been seen, right? Many times. "With tears augmenting the fresh morning's dew, adding to clouds more clouds with his deep sighs." So sometimes you have to figure out what words do you know. Like maybe you don't know augment, but with tears, something the fresh morning's dew. So you have to kind of picture fresh morning dew on a flower, okay? And then tears are being added to that fresh morning dew. So what's Romeo doing? Spencer, what's Romeo doing? If tears are augmenting the fresh morning's dew. Yeah, he's crying, right? Adding to clouds, more clouds with his deep sighs. You know how in the morning, how your breath fogs up, right? So it's so if he's been doing that most mornings, how would you diagnose him if you were a therapist?
Depression.
Yeah, depression, right? Wow, there's something going on with you. You're depressed. We got to figure out what's going on. "Many a morning hath he there been seen, with tears augmenting the fresh morning's dew, adding to clouds more clouds with his deep sighs." Page 19, top of page 19. "But also soon as the all-cheering sun should in the farthest east began to draw the shady curtains from Aurora's bed, away from light steals home my heavy son, and private in his chamber pins himself, shuts up the windows, locks fair daylight out, and makes himself an artificial night." So what does Romeo do? As soon as the sun rises, what does Romeo do? Yeah, closes his window, shuts his doors, locks himself in his bedroom, makes himself an artificial night, right? More signs of depression, right? So you're telling me before the sun rises, you are walking around crying. Then once the sun's risen and everyone's, out and about, you lock yourself in your room. You don't want to talk to anyone. You just want to sleep all day. Classic symptoms of depression, right? "Black and portentous must this humor prove, unless good counsel may the cause remove." This could get bad if we don't fix it. And it does get bad. Because what do we know going into this?
They die.
Not only do they die, but he kills himself. So I guess he does sort of have depression in that sense. And maybe it does turn into black and portentous, it may prove. So that's something that kind of, remember, Shakespeare says, what here shall miss, our toil shall strive to mend. What these kids screw up on and end up killing themselves over, us watching that happen should fix it, because like we won't do it in our lives. So Montague is talking about his son, and I'm going to speed up a little, so I'll stop doing so much. Oh, except for after this section. My noble uncle, do you know the cause? I neither know it nor can learn of him. Have you importuned him by any means? And okay, importuned, what does that mean? You have to go to the left, and line, if line 50 is below it, and line 49, 148. So where's line 148? What does line 148 mean? Question, very good, thank you. Importuned question. So then you have to replace it. Have you questioned him by any means? And have you asked him what the heck is wrong? Both by myself and many other friends. But he, his own affections counselor, is to himself, I will not say how true, but to himself so secret and so close, so far from sounding in discovery, as is the bud bit with an envious worm, ere he can spread his sweet leaves to the air, or dedicate his beauty to the same. Could we but learn from whence his sorrows grow, we would willingly give cure as no. So that line, Romeo is to himself so secret and so close, so far from sounding in discovery, as is the bud. What's a bud? Is it a flower? It's a baby flower, right? Baby flower. And is, because you have to do that literal translation, and then you have to figure out what it means. And especially if you weren't here last class, you really got to pay attention to this, because this is how you read Shakespeare, it's two-pronged. You have to literally think about what's being said in the line. So he says he's so far from sounding in discovery, as is line 154, as is the bud bit by an envious worm. So you literally have to picture a flower bud and then a worm. And how's the worm described? Envious. He's like a jealous worm. Like, what does the worm want? He wants like the nectar inside. Oh, I want the nectar. And it's just a little baby flower bud. It's not ready to open yet. And the worm's like, let me in. I want the nectar. And the bud's like, no, I'm not ready to open. And the worm's like, no, I want the nectar. Tell me, I want the nectar. So then you're like, okay, wait, why are we talking about worms? Who's the worm and who's the bud? Romeo's the bud, right? He's closed off. He won't open up. Come on, I wish you'd open up to me, son. No. Montague, is the envious worm. Montague's like, what's wrong? Tell me what's wrong. Why are you so upset? And Romeo's like, no, I don't want to tell you. And he's like, come on, open up for me. Open up. No, I don't want to open up. Don't you? I want to open up once I'm ready to open up. Think about it. If you take a flower bud and like break it open, is it going to be that beautiful flower that it would have been had you just let it open up on its own? No, right? So Montague's like, tell me what's wrong, tell me what's wrong, tell me what's wrong. And Romeo's like, no. And like, that's not the way to approach it, right? So Montague's saying, gosh, I've tried, but maybe you can try Benvolio. Maybe he won't open up to me. He's like a bud. I'm the envious worm, but maybe he'll open up to you. So Benvolio says, see where he goes, so please do step aside. I'll know his grievance or be much denied. And Montague, please, help him. I would that were so happy by thy stay to hear true shrift. Come, madam, let's away. And so then Benvolio sees Romeo, and I'm not going to say like Benvolio says, Romeo says, because you're going to be able to tell by my voice, right? Benvolio, he's the normal, peaceful, happy one. Romeo's like, oh, I'm so depressed. But not in like a way that we feel bad for him, because he's hella rich, super good looking, the most privileged boy in all the land. He has no reason to be like this, you know? Okay. Good morrow, cousin. Is the day so young? But new struck 9. Ay me, sad hours seem long. Was that my father that went hence so fast? It was. What sadness lengthens Romeo's hours? Not having that, which having makes them short. In love? Out of love, out of her favor where I am in love. Alas, that love, so tyrannous in proof, alas, that love, so gentle in his view, should be so tyrannous and rough in proof. Alas, that love, whose view is muffled still, should see without eyes pathways to his will. Where shall we dine? Oh me, oh my, what fray was here? Yet tell me not. for I've heard it all. Here's much to do with hate, but more with love. And that line is like a really important line, right? Where he says, here's much to do with hate, but more with love. He sees the fray, the chaos, and he's like, you know what? Like this fighting, it's a lot to do with hate, but it's more to do with love. It's not really that the Montagues hate the Capulets. It's that they love their own leaders more, right? It's like when two religions fight. It's not that they hate the people that they're fighting or two countries. It's that they love their own country, or they love their God, or they love their sports team, right? It's why people get into big fights, over football games. If these people met under any other circumstance, they'd be having a beer together, just relaxing. But because they're loyal, they have allegiance to different, masters, different entities, they act differently to each other. So it's something that you kind of like are impressed with Romeo for saying, like, here's much to do with hate, but more with love. Like, that's a really good point, Romeo. Dang, you're annoying, but that's a good point. And that's sort of something that goes through this entire play. If you look at it through the lens of all this fighting, okay, yeah, there's hate, but really it's about love. And we're going to be looking at it through the lens of loyalty and how the love that we have for our friends, our family, maybe our lovers, like potential like relationships, that sometimes that loyalty can end up killing you sometimes, or can end up with disastrous consequences. Okay, so Romeo is complaining about his love. He goes back to complaining about that, and he's just going to kind of go on and on about love is so hard. Oh my gosh, I'm in love and she doesn't love me back. Why? Here's much to do with hate, but more with love. Why then, oh brawling love, oh loving hate, oh anything of nothing first create, oh heavy lightness, serious vanity, misshapen chaos of well-seeming forms, feather of lead, bright smoke, cold fire, sick health, still waking sleep that is not what it is. This love feel I that feel no love in this. And the whole time Benvolio's like, no, I'm listening here. And Romeo said, dost thou not laugh? Are you laughing at me, bro? Come on, man, I'm having a hard time. And Benvolio was like, no, no, cuz, I'd rather weep. No, man, I'd rather cry for you. And Romeo's like, good heart at what? Benvolio says, at thy good heart's oppression. Why, such is love's transgression. Griefs of mine own lie heavy in my breast, which thou wilt propagate to have pressed with more of thine. This love that thou hast shown doth add more grief to much of mine own. He's like, dude, don't even start crying for me, because if you start crying, I'm gonna start crying, because, man, I love you so much. Thank you for showing so much love, because I'm going through a really tough time right now. The grief that you have shown doth add much more grief to mine own. Like, don't even. And then he goes on for what love is. What is love? It's a smoke made with the fume of sighs, being purged. It's a fire sparkling in lovers' eyes. Being vexed, it's a sea nourished with loving tears. What is it else? It's a madness most discreet, a choking gall, and a preserving sweet. So he's saying all these things that love are, that love is full of opposites. You should be following along in your book, please. We're on line 200, Mia. So when he says it's all of these opposites, I really like that last line, 201, a choking gall and a preserving sweet. Love is like eating a piece of candy and then choking on it. Oh my God, I'm dying. Somebody come save me. Oh my gosh. Oh my God, that piece of candy almost killed me. But gosh, that was a good candy. That was a really good candy, man. I kind of miss that candy. Maybe I should call that candy or see if that candy has been on Snapchat recently. What's up, baby? How you doing? I know you broke my heart, but I want you back, girl. So love is like choking on a candy, and then you're like, gosh, I kind of miss that candy. And then you're eating that candy again the next day, right? Or the next night. So when you're, I did not mean for that to sound how it sounded. I didn't even mean it like that. I meant because, like, you're not allowed to eat candy during the day because it's bad for you. So I was, yeah. So Romeo then goes on and is, about to just kind of just walk and be more depressed. And he says, farewell, my cuz. And Benvolio says, soft, I'll go along. And if you leave me so, you do me wrong. Like, come on, I'll come with you. And Romeo says, tut, I've lost myself. I'm not here. This is not Romeo. He is some other where. Tell me in sadness, said Benvolio. Who is it that you love? What, shall I groan and tell thee? Shh. You guys, I need the next 5 minutes to get through it without having to like worry if when you guys talk even 1 or 2 sentences, then you have no idea what I'm saying when you come back into listening. So, and especially if you weren't here last class because you came super late because you slept in, and now you're here to make up for that, I would expect that you would be the quietest. Not you girls, I'm talking to her. Okay, so there's some funny like double entendre, sexy stuff here. So listen up. So I'm not going to explain it. You got to pay attention yourself. Okay, so tell me in sadness, who is it that you love? Ugh, what, shall I groan and tell thee? Groan? Why no, but sadly tell me who. A sick man in sadness makes his will. A word ill-urged to one that is so ill. In sadness, cousin, I do love a woman. I aimed so near when I supposed you loved. Ah, right good markman, and she's fair, I love. A right fair mark, fair cuz, is soonest hit. Well, in that hit, you miss. So Benvolio's like, well, I was aiming that it was a woman, right? I aimed so near. And he's like, well, you're a good marksman. And then he picks up on the word marksman, right, for shooting or like arrows in this case. And he's like, well, if she's a good mark, right, if you have your mark, set your mark on that girl, if she's a fair mark, a beautiful mark, then you better hit that mark. She's hot? You hit that yet? Psh, why not? A right fair mark, fair cuz, is soonest hit. And then Romeo says, well, in that hit, you miss. She'll not be hit with Cupid's arrow. Man, I tried to hit her with my Cupid's arrow, but she was like, nah. She hath Diane's wit, and in strong proof of chastity well armed. So if you look at what Diane's wit is on 217, it's the wisdom of Diana, goddess of chastity, who is opposed to love and marriage. So it was like, there are people who are like, oh, sorry, I have Diane's wit. I actually am opposed to love and marriage, so I don't date, and I'm never gonna marry, and I don't engage in sexual relations, right? The funny thing is, there's this whole like side story here that like those people were actually not into men, and they used that like, oh, sorry, I follow the goddess of Diana, and that's why I can't sleep with you. And really, it was like because they didn't want to be with men, period, and they had to like use that as an excuse because you couldn't be like openly gay back then. So he's like probably pining for this woman who's like not even into him ever, right? Because he's wealthy, he's attractive. There's really no reason a woman wouldn't be into him, especially back then. But she says that she's never gonna have sex or get married or fall in love. And he says, from love's weak, childish bow, she lives uncharmed. I can't charm her with my love bow. She will not stay the siege of loving terms. I tried to talk her into it. Oh, baby, you're so beautiful. It didn't work. Nor bid the encounter of assailing eyes. I tried to give her the eye. What's up? It didn't work. Nor ope her lap to seducing gold. I tried to give her jewelry. It didn't work. Oh, she is rich in beauty, only poor, that when she dies, with beauty dies her store. Oh, she's so beautiful that it's such a waste that when she dies, she'll never have any of her pretty babies to propagate the world with, that she'll never have babies to go into the world. Why can't we have babies together? They'd be so cute. And unfortunately, we are going to run out of time, so let's pause here, and you can grab your phones, and we will finish next class.